We often picture corporate disruption as a sudden attack from a highly advanced, dominant competitor. But historical financial data from the late 1990s shows a different reality. The challenger in this story was actually failing. When executives only look for threats from healthy, well-funded rivals, they overlook the early warning signs of a shift in the market. Disruption rarely starts from a position of strength. It begins in a state of financial desperation. The lopsided transfer of value that followed would eventually be worth $200 billion. That massive shift began when the founders of a struggling Netflix booked a commercial flight to Dallas to seek a lifeline from the industry leader. On a Friday night in 1998, the ritual was nearly universal. Families across North America drove to stores lit by bright blue and yellow neon. Blockbuster operated over 9,000 locations and maintained a database of 65 million loyal customers. This chart shows their financial momentum, with annual revenue climbing to a peak of $6 billion. They dictated the terms of the home video market, controlling nearly every aspect of the weekend entertainment experience. This level of success created a specific type of corporate blindness, where high revenues masked structural vulnerabilities from the leadership team. Maintaining this empire required immense overhead. Blockbuster had to staff thousands of stores and manage the physical racking from millions of individual tapes. Inside their Dallas headquarters, executives believed their control over physical distribution made the company invincible. This reliance on retail storefronts acted as a logistical anchor, leaving the company vulnerable to any competitor that could deliver movies without the need for a building. In 1997, a startup in California attempted to bypass the storefront model entirely by renting movies directly through the mail. The plan faced a physical barrier. Traditional VHS tapes were too fragile and bulky to be sent cost-effectively through the postal system. The development of the digital video disc changed the requirements for shipping media. Because the DVD was thin and durable, Netflix could reach customers using a simple red envelope. This hardware update created a distribution channel, bypassing the need for Blockbuster's thousands of retail leases. This graph shows the financial reality for Netflix at the time. They were rapidly depleting their remaining venture capital. Their unit economics were unsustainable. They lost money on every new customer they acquired. The 2000 dot-com market crash further destabilized the company. As investors withdrew their funding from internet startups, Netflix faced the prospect of total collapse. Reed Hastings drafted a proposal to sell the entire company to Blockbuster for $50 million. The founders took a turbulent flight to Dallas to present the offer in person, offering their future to the giant they would eventually replace. September 2000. High inside the Renaissance Tower in Dallas, two very different business models were about to collide. Inside the boardroom was Blockbuster CEO John Antioco, a retail veteran who had just completed one of the company's most successful turnarounds. At the time, Blockbuster's reach was nearly universal. On any given Friday night, millions visited thousands of locations exactly like this to find a rental. When Reed Hastings arrived to pitch an acquisition, he brought a business plan that challenged the core logic of that entire physical empire. Hidden within Blockbuster's accounting was a massive revenue stream that looked profitable on paper, but relied entirely on an increasingly frustrated customer base. Antioco's focus on retail logistics and store volume left him unprepared for the shift toward a digital distribution model. Hastings offered to sell Netflix to Blockbuster for $50 million. Netflix would take over the brand's online operations, managing the website and the digital delivery of movies. Blockbuster, in turn, would focus on what it already did best, managing its inventory and its massive network of physical storefronts. This hybrid approach would have combined the convenience of the internet with the immediate availability of a local store, potentially creating a monopoly in the home video market. Antioco and his team were not interested. They reportedly dismissed the proposal and the $50 million price tag as a joke. To these executives, Netflix was a money-losing dot-com business with a niche service that seemed incapable of scaling. They believed customers would always prefer the instant experience of picking up a movie in person over waiting for a disc to arrive in the mail. However, that belief ignored the fact that their own profit model was built on a foundation of customer penalties. By walking away from the deal, Blockbuster missed the early shift in consumer behavior that would eventually make their physical infrastructure a liability. This chart shows how Blockbuster's revenue was actually distributed in the early 2000s. Nearly $800 million, roughly 16% of their total revenue, came from late fees. The model required strict return deadlines and additional charges for things like unrewound tapes to maintain its margins. This created a persistent sense of friction for the customer, who faced financial penalties for simple human error. Blockbuster's growth was now dependent on its own customers failing to return movies on time. Netflix removed that friction by introducing a flat-fee subscription model. You could keep the movies as long as you wanted, with no due dates. It replaced the trip to the store with a simple walk to the mailbox, removing the stress of a ticking clock. This model allowed Netflix to grow its subscriber base throughout the 2000s, slowly siphoning away Blockbuster's most frequent customers. Over the next decade, while Blockbuster managed the debt of its physical stores, Netflix invested its subscription revenue into the server infrastructure required for a digital-first world. By 2010, the weight of that debt and the rise of high-speed internet led to Blockbuster filing for bankruptcy and closing at thousands of locations. The shift from physical discs to streaming completed the transition, moving home entertainment entirely into the digital realm. The $50 million Blockbuster refused to pay in 2000 was eventually used to build the platform that would replace them entirely. In 2006, Blockbuster executives were celebrating. Their Total Access program was pushing red envelopes through the mail, matching their upstart rival. They believed they had finally secured their retail empire. While millions of plastic discs crossed the country, Reed Hastings was constructing a digital infrastructure designed to make the postal system irrelevant. Look at this graph of internet adoption. As high-speed broadband surged into North American homes in 2007, the physical limitations of movie rental disappeared. Netflix immediately executed its second phase, launching Watch Now. Subscribers could instantly stream movies directly to their computers, bypassing retail stores and mailboxes entirely. Overnight, the dominant distribution model of the previous 2 decades became entirely obsolete, shattering the physical rental market. Blockbuster found itself locked into a digital conflict, armed only with brick-and-mortar weapons. They were trapped by the very infrastructure that originally built their dominance. A common misconception is that Blockbuster simply lacked the vision to build a streaming platform. Their inability to compete actually originated deep within their balance sheet. They were paying rent, utilities, and staffing costs for thousands of sprawling retail locations. Compounding that daily operational drain was nearly $1 billion in outstanding debt. This balance sheet reveals the fatal blow. When their former parent company, Viacom, spun them off in 2004, they forcefully transferred $900 million of corporate liabilities directly onto Blockbuster's books. Before the streaming war even escalated, Blockbuster was already choking. Their capital was entirely consumed by servicing old debt and maintaining empty stores. Any remaining opportunity to restructure and pivot was eliminated by a macroeconomic disaster. During the 2008 financial crisis, global credit markets froze. Banks stopped lending entirely, cutting off the only avenue Blockbuster had to refinance its crushing liabilities. This chart shows the stark divergence in corporate health. While Blockbuster plunged deeper into negative territory, their agile competitor accumulated massive cash reserves from millions of digital-only subscribers. The math finally caught up to reality. In September 2010, the company officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. A corporate giant that once commanded $6 billion in annual revenue was permanently delisted from the New York Stock Exchange, its remaining shares trading for mere pennies. Their massive physical footprint, originally the source of their industry monopoly, became the precise weight that dragged them down in a digital economy. Looking at today's market, the signs of structural failure repeat themselves. Identifying the next corporate collapse requires examining how companies manage their capital today. Evaluating a company requires looking past the surface. As this earnings breakdown illustrates, high revenue often masks a dangerous debt-to-equity ratio, or capital trapped in legacy operations. Industry leaders that refuse to abandon their physical legacy operations cannot compete with rivals scaling purely on software. The maintenance costs simply devour their margins. If a business refuses to cannibalize its own outdated revenue streams, the open market will gladly do it for them. Protect your portfolio by focusing on architectural agility. When economic conditions tighten and credit evaporates, rigid companies with heavy footprints are always the first to sink. Netflix now operates as a global media monopoly with a valuation exceeding $200 billion. Their $50 million asking price back in 2000 is now just a microscopic fraction of their total worth. Take a look at the current titans of industry. Which legacy giant do you think is quietly collapsing under its own weight? Let us know in the comments below. To learn how to audit your own portfolio for these hidden liabilities, click the link in the description and download our proprietary guide, the Asset Agility Framework. The rules of capital allocation are unforgiving. You must adapt, or you become a casualty.